We're speaking today with Norman Filkenstein. He received his doctorate in 1988 from the Department of Politics at Princeton University. For many years he taught political theory and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. He's currently an independent scholar. Mr. Filkenstein is the author of 5 books, which have been translated into more than 40 foreign editions, including The Holocaust Industry, Reflections on the Exploitation of Jewish Suffering, Beyond Chutzpah, on the Misuse of Anti-Semitism and the Abuse of History, and Image and Reality of the Israel-Palestine Conflict. He's just completed a new book entitled A Farewell to Israel, The Coming Breakup of American Zionism, which will be released in 2009. Mr. Filkenstein, welcome to Maastricht.
Well, thank you.
I'd like to start off, we just listened to you speaking at the Studium Generale event from Maastricht University. I was wondering if you could tell us, do you notice a difference in your reception in the United States as opposed to in Europe at all?
No, actually the audiences, college audiences, their reception tends to be fairly homogeneous. Wherever I speak, there seems to be an element of seriousness, earnestness, and interest. If you treat the audience with respect, or if you treat a college classroom with respect, wherever you go, it's pretty much the same reception.
The Holocaust Industry, Reflections on the Exploitation of Jewish Suffering, was published in 2000. I was wondering if you could tell us what the Holocaust industry is.
Basically, it's the exploitation of the colossal suffering of Jews during World War II for political and then for a certain period financial gain. The political gain was basically using the Nazi Holocaust as a club to silence criticism of Israel. And at some point, this Holocaust compensation racket, the extraction of monies from European governments in the name of what were called needy Holocaust victims, began. And several, I think the figure comes now to about $20 billion, were coerced from European governments, mostly on fraudulent grounds.
Okay. You've spoken about the Holocaust in 2 different lights. One is the historical event, the Nazi Holocaust, and the other is the ideological Holocaust that you're mentioning now, that's used as a means of profiteering. Would that be a fair categorization?
Profiteering and political intimidation.
Could you contrast the two? What is the picture of the actual history as opposed to the one that's presented?
The actual history, there are many competent historians who've done excellent research on the topic. It's not the historians that usually get the big reviews in the mainstream media. They treat the topic with great seriousness. And as I say, there's accumulated a significant body of research pioneered by Raoul Hilberg, the Austrian-born and an American political scientist, his book being The Destruction of the European Jews. And then there's all of this schlock nonsense, which basically is used to defend Israel and deflect criticism of Israeli policy. You can usually tell this literature because it asserts or insists on the absolute uniqueness of the Nazi Holocaust, the claim that no people in the history of humanity have ever suffered the way Jews suffered. And that's clearly an ideological claim. You can't intellectually prove things like that, and it's almost absurd to want to prove them. The purpose is fairly straightforward. That is, if people have uniquely suffered, then they can't be held to conventional moral and legal standards. So, for example, if you say that Israel tortures Palestinian detainees, well, then you're told, remember the Holocaust. Or if you're told that Israel illegally demolishes the homes of Palestinians, you're told, remember the Holocaust. The point being that because Jews suffered uniquely, it somehow excuses these, by any other standard, crimes.
Okay. Would you like something to drink?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. We said this evening, and I'm paraphrasing because I wasn't able to write it down quickly enough, there exists a consensus for realizing the Israeli-Palestinian, for resolving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Mm-hmm.
There's no conflict in the world which is less complicated, less controversial. Referring again to the publication of the Holocaust Industry, when the hardcover edition came out, and I'm quoting from the foreword to the softcover edition later, the book evoked considerable reaction internationally. In contrast to the deafening roar elsewhere, the initial response in the United States was silence. Why is that? Why in the United States is there this idea that it's such a complex issue, and why was there silence when this book came out?
Well, no, I think that we're confusing. I spoke this evening on the Israel-Palestine conflict and said that it was relatively uncomplicated, probably the least complicated conflict in the world. But with the case of the Nazi Holocaust, there are serious scholarly questions which it's not easy to supply answers to. In fact, the most basic questions remain areas of great contention among historians. The basic questions are, why did Hitler order the Nazi Holocaust, and when did he order it? The why and the when, and in fact, there's no agreement among historians on the answers to those two questions.
So this idea that often emerges of linking the Holocaust to the necessity for Israel, or that's not a valid correlation, or
people can make that sort of argument, and I don't think it's in itself invalid. The issue that arises is, given the catastrophe that Jews experienced or endured during World War II, can a catastrophe, even of those dimensions or of that magnitude, can a catastrophe of that magnitude justify the ethnic cleansing of Palestine? That's the issue. And in my opinion, the answer is no. No amount of human suffering can justify the kinds of suffering which were inflicted on the people that clearly had no responsibility for the suffering itself.